It's very, very interesting that the last time many of y'all came back and told me for around 30 seconds, I was looking left, right, here, there, coming close to the camera, moving further away. And what was that? And that was an amateur trying to get LinkedIn Live, Insta Live, and YouTube Live going all in one go because you got to toggle screens and do that. Hopefully, this time I've done it in under 30 seconds. Good evening, everybody. It is so nice to have so many of you joining in on Quick Bites with HR Bites. Yet another Monday, yet another 8 p.m. Indian Standard Time, and episode number 12, the second of 2025, and overall 12 episodes. Honestly speaking, for those of you who know me, numbers don't matter. But at times, for people who've just joined in or people who haven't got synced into the whole HR Bytes world, this one's for you. Like every time, today I have with me another special person. Another person who I got to know from the world of LinkedIn. Another person who got me introduced to something so fascinating that both of us decided, hey, you know what? Instead of just two of us having a conversation, why not let all of her followers and all of my followers and everybody out there who really needs this conversation benefit from it? For those of you who've been following Quick Bites with HR Bites, you know that we don't believe in titles, we don't believe in designations, and we never do an introduction saying, welcome so-and-so, you're X this organization or X that organization, or you've been the CEO or you are the CEO, because we firmly believe that titles come and go, but people remain. And when people also move on, it's what they share that remains with us. It's the way they've lived their life that remains with us as lessons. And therefore, at HR Bytes, the whole intent is to get to know the person. But without further ado, I have absolute pleasure in bringing on stage Meera Swaroop. Hi, Meera. Good evening.
Good evening, Sahil. And what an enthusiastic introduction. Thank you. It is almost like a drum roll.
Oh, yeah. But thank you so much for actually taking time out on Lori. And I know, it's a festival out there. So greetings to everybody who's celebrating and best wishes. And Meera, I know you made this commitment. You actually got me connected with your team, Nupur, and the entire gang. And it has been amazing since then. You've been at it, you've been in touch. And I am so happy to have you with all of us this evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sahil. I'm sure the team is listening in, and really the credit goes to them for us to be able to smoothly have this conversation today.
Absolutely. So for many others who know Meera, fantastic. For those who don't, will anyway visit your LinkedIn profile and they'll get to know. But since we have you with us, please tell us, who is Meera Swaroop?
I usually like to introduce myself as an army brat. So thank you for asking, Sahil. It's always a pleasure to show that my roots come from there. My father was in the forces, my grandparents were in the forces, and thanks to that, I've had the opportunity and privilege to really get ingrained in this way of being. Thanks to this, I give credit because I've got a chance to travel the length and the breadth of the country, and that shapes a good amount of what I bring to my work today. I've grown up with a sense of confusion of what is it that I really want to pursue, as do most individuals in those early years of life. I watched my father be a doctor, so the closest to that, I did my bachelor's in biotechnology. I did my master's in clinical research, and a good 10 years was spent in healthcare. I like to say that I was playing Jekyll and Hyde at that time because clinical research is a lot about experimenting drugs on human beings. So, of
True.
course, my job was to make sure it's all ethical and all in norms, yet, that's the exciting side of drug and pharmacy. With those 10 years of healthcare experience that came in, there was something that got ingrained really deep. And this is what I like to take you through. So I take the privilege of cracking this joke, but it's a joke in the pharma industry. Cardiologists think they are gods, oncologists think they are gods of gods. It's a joke. Let's take it in our stride. And the gynecologist, he dances along with the joke.
I think you were going to go on with the joke, so I paused, but you completed it at the oncologist.
Yes. And so what I'm priming at is that I was exposed to an environment where you're walking around with people who we perceive them as people with inflated egos.
Yeah.
And I would say rightfully so, for the kind of experiences that they've gathered and the kind of lives that they've lived to arrive where they have. Sleepless nights, one surgery to the other, sleeping on a stretcher in the middle of nowhere, figuring out how to complete your MD. It's intense work. And somehow it just gives an inflated sense of ego to some individuals. My exposure to them guided me to learn what does it mean to have difficult conversations with people in authority. Having the courage to
Hmm.
call out to a doctor, a very senior specialist, that the patient you enrolled on that trial is incorrect and we'll have to pull them off. These are hard conversations. And therefore, that muscle or that skill set got developed. Another phase of my life,
Hmm.
as I crossed through 10 years of this, another phase of my life, what I do today is significantly different. And as much as I give credit to the years where I have really got ingrained in difficult conversations, stakeholder management, the early years of my life give credit to what I do today. So if I go back to the roots and we were in the forces, I got a chance to see something that will break a myth for many of our audience today. Many of us, and I for some time also thought so, that people are born with a certain sense of charm and a certain sense of charisma. We see somebody
Hmm.
very well turned out and they seem to know how to say what to say. And we tend to feel, they're born with it. And that's so far away from the truth because I got a chance to see it so up close.
Hmm.
In the forces, I got a chance to see a boy join the army or a girl join the army. And when I say join, I'm referring to that they could have literally got commissioned into the forces, or they
Hmm.
got married to somebody in the forces,
Sure.
or they were literally born in the forces, like I'm born in the forces. But not everyone, a select few, I got a chance to see where a boy transformed to a gentleman and a girl transformed to a lady. This was not change, this was transformation because you see, a butterfly doesn't change back into a caterpillar. And that transformation, if we go back to the roots, you saw people who had no connection to the forces or to anything closest to regality. And they came from a very far distant village, first generation forces, but just absorbing the maximum from their environment and exuding that sense of presence, making it who they are. I am privileged to have got a chance to see this, to now say, oh, it's learnable.
Hmm.
And so I take the pleasure and privilege of doing what I do, walking people, helping people, professionals, to gain impact, to gain influence in the rooms that matter by shifting the way they communicate and by shifting the way they present themselves. Yeah, that's what I do.
Fine. Yeah, very, very interesting, because, being in the space of human resources, we are so blessed to have the opportunity to meet so many people, right? Whether it is candidates who apply for roles, whether it is partners, whether it's vendors, whether it is other kind of people who like to associate in various forms and shapes. But I must say that as I just rewind everything that you said, you put it in such a beautiful manner. No one knew whether you were going to come and tell us this is who you are, whether you were answering the question, or whether you were meandering to go around telling us a story that maybe had a lesson, or eventually gravitate us to tell us about the purpose of why you do what you do. And I think just the way in those 4 5 minutes you went around talking about so many different aspects, a couple of things resonated with me, right? My maternal side also is from the forces. My dad is also a doctor.
I
And a
didn't know
lot
that.
of things that yeah, we didn't know that because we never got down to talking about that. But
Yeah.
interestingly, I could resonate with that aspect. But just the way you weaved in lessons from there, and I'm so tempted to park aside the topic that we thought we will talk on, of course, with no questions shared with you because this is completely unscripted. But I'm going to spend a couple of minutes asking you, having um, school friends' parents who've been in the forces, having relatives who've been in the forces, when they leave the forces, right, and they come into civilian life, what has been your experience of that transition? Is it a myth that it is extremely difficult and they feel outcast and out of place and they need a so-called MBA or a course or a Mira Swaroop to transition into a civilian world because it's a very different world? Or is it just life, but we've overhyped it? What's your take on that?
Sahil, I really like that question. And I'm going to share that response from two parts. I didn't see dad struggle.
Mm-hmm.
Or if he did, I think he carried it off with gentleman panache. Um, I saw him plan for sure,
Yeah.
mentally first. And I think when he was planning, preparing himself, he was preparing us as a family too, that, hey, that date is coming close.
Mm-hmm.
So he nearly followed the tenure of serving the forces with just a couple of years early retirement. But I would say that a lot of effort went into mentally preparing yourself that we are stepping out and taking care of course, the basic needs of what does it mean financially, what does it mean location wise, what does it mean operationally to not have support staff, to figure out things on your own in your own environment. Those are things that they certainly spoke about. But I remember in depth conversations, particularly with my mother, about how we would want to learn a way to blend with the new set of people that we start living with. I recall conversations where she spoke about you've developed a lot of, or shall we say, you've inherited a lot of heirs from the forces. You want to just make sure that you also learn the art of blending. And that lesson stayed close because I saw them smoothly transition. I saw how popular my mom can be in the local crowd, which gave me an indication, oh, she seems to have really blended in. I got to see that journey just partly because that was also the time when I was flying the nest and I joined college. So I just saw that in bits and pieces. But you know, when you hit college, you're a civilian. So you don't really carry the airs anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I give a lot of credit to watching them mentally prepare themselves. And I think it was
Mm.
their personal mindset as well as their own crowd of people who they were influenced by to know, yeah, there's a life beyond this and we can do this.
Yeah.
So it was that was a beautiful example. But like you and I are speaking right now, I had the opportunity to interview a gentleman, and pardon me, the name's not coming, but everybody you would know if you go to Naukri, Workwise with Naukri, a podcast where I got an opportunity to interview accomplished professionals. And the gentleman, a colonel from the forces, took a much early retirement and really switched to an IT experience. And it was very visible to him that he did not allow the forces to become a very strong part of his identity, that
Mm-hmm.
he is finds himself helpless without it, but saw that, oh, okay, this has shaped a good amount of who I am. Like he saw strong discipline, strong tones of things being methodical. He really had those things that you would typically see with somebody in the forces. But we got an opportunity. Colonel Iqbal, yes, it's come to me
Oh,
now.
you finally got it.
And
You got the name.
yes, yes, wonderful gentleman. Had a chance to interview him, and what I picked was that one thing, he dropped the identity from his personality that, oh, I'm an army ex-army officer. It came as a part of his interview, but that's not something that just keeps going in every conversation. And he wouldn't ever talk of, hamare zamane mein, or this is what used to happen at the forces, and this is very disorganized. I think he embraced the chaos.
Mm.
He saw it as an opportunity, and particularly shifted his career significantly to now be working at Google, which for me, it was like a fantastic journey to see, because I've seen people join the forces and stay in the forces for a good number of time.
Mm,
But with him, I saw he took a break, and it was really the mindset and ensuring that you're not so stuck to the identity. Yeah.
got it. So, Meera, I also, as I was hearing you, I felt parts of what I heard were very paradoxical, right? Because when you look at people from the forces, I think they're the best people at agility because every couple of years you're getting transferred, you're moving to a different city. I'm sure people would study in different schools and make new friends. And by the time you've just about settled in, you're again uprooted to go to another place. Generally, of course, some
So true.
people, spouses, and the children stay back in the city, but generally you move with whether your husband or your wife or your daughter or your mother or your father is in the forces. But when it comes to transitioning and moving out of the forces, that is a knee jerk, as Imagine rightly said. If you don't plan for it, a lot of people then get into their cocoon, get into their shell, find it difficult to interact. But even though they may have moved 10 cities and had five different postings, because the group is still so homogeneous, it's the same canteen, it's the same club, it's the same old monk, it's the same homogeneous group or the same Navy ball, you find it very easy. Now, if I have to just transition this as an analogy to the corporate world, many a times we see people who have been lifers in certain organizations. When they go to another organization, even though it may have been a better brand, a better rank, a better role, a better compensation, within a couple of months, they boomerang and go back to their previous organization. Uh,
Yeah.
what is your thought about such transitions, and what would you really share with people's inability to embrace and adapt new environments rather
Hmm.
than taking the easy way out and going back to your previous organization and then tell the world, hey, they're calling me so many times, they've not even found my replacement, and they've been pestering me, so I just thought I'll go back. It's a nice place. Even organization B was a good organization, but I just thought I'll go back to my first organization. So certain thoughts there.
Right. I like your question there, Sahil, and I'll share something from experience. So let's put this into, again, two parts, because I see that I'm seeing this conversation from two angles.
Sure.
My husband has had the opportunity to go back to the same organization he was working for, and I've had a chance to watch that transition. Um, of course, he went back after 4 years, but that conversation came from a space of, yes, they called and they have something meatier to offer,
Hmm.
and I'm very keen on joining.
Yeah.
And I feel like that came from a space of, I'm ready for the next level.
Hmm.
And as much as I've been trying in this organization for getting that next level, I didn't see it as yet, and therefore I'm shifting. So, no complaints yet. An opportunity showed up, and therefore, for reasons that we, after much discussion, justified that do we really want to go back?
Yeah.
And to that, it came to, yes, I'd really like to go back for dash reasons. Ensuring that this qualifies for them as success, this qualifies for them as career progress, and not an easy way out. Those are the terms that we looked at. So, given a situation where you're very clear that you're using this particular step for a step that you will feel most fulfilled by, there are ways to determine what fulfillment needs for you. Is it the monetary growth? Is it the career role, the projection of authority? Or is it that I will get more time to be with my kids? Whatever your designation for what you're doing, whatever your rule for why you're choosing that particular position, if that applies for you, great.
Sure.
When we look at it from the other angle that you initially shared this picture from, that people would join an organization, not be too comfortable with the change, not like probably the boss or the colleagues, or maybe they're judgmental of the rigid structure or the lack of structure. There could be several reasons. And then stepping back and saying, I can't work here, and then heading back. In the forces, you don't get that opportunity. In the forces, you're out. Like, it's okay, tata,
Right.
bye bye.
Yeah.
Yet, um, here, yes, that is a possibility too, where people consider going back to the organization. And That's why the key question we want to ask, and I've had the opportunity to have these discussions with some of the people I've got the privilege to coach, is that what makes you choose this organization? What was your experience in the past that you believe will be different now? What were the reasons why you moved out? The clarity that we can help them gain in that area helps them then take a decision. Yeah.
Right. Interesting. We have a couple of people who joined in live. We would love to know which city you've joined in from, and if you've had any interactions with people from the forces. A lot of respect to them. We would love to hear your stories in the comments as well. So let us know which city you've joined in from, and also if you've had any interactions with people from the forces. Nice to see you, Dr. Mohammed. Lovely to have you listening in live. Mira, just transitioning from the two aspects that you spoke about, right? I think personality also plays a very, very important role. So, what have been some of your experiences as you've coached so many people in helping them understand personalities of stakeholders, or like you mentioned, a boss in that case, where at least today you have different generations deciding which company to join basis who they want to work with, right? And in back in the day, you never had a choice. You would say, okay, this is a good organization, let's join here. But now you're saying, hey, but this is a great person, I want to work with this person, and therefore I'm willing to join this organization. So how does one go about understanding your boss's personality and then, of course, navigating through that?
I once had this conversation with my boss. He was my first boss. His name is Nayar. He's based in the UK. And it was a wonderful analogy that he shared with me that whenever you're looking to see an organization and the boss combination, you want to check good boss, bad company, stay, because you don't know where this boss could take you.
True.
Bad boss, good company, try to stay and see what you can do to maneuver things and find a path forward. Bad company, bad boss, leave
Right away.
immediately. So
And the fourth
I'm with you.
quadrant?
Good company, good boss, totally stay. Stay for long
Oh,
and plan retirement there if necessary. But find a navigate your path because you can see that there's success through and through.
no.
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Um, when we look at how our bosses, okay, so let's look at our bosses.
Yeah,
We, in the environments that we've grown, and especially if it's patriarchal, there is an expectation that you have from the person in authority. And if I just keep it gender neutral, also, there is an expectation that the person in authority would be somebody who sets an example,
right.
who would walk the talk, who would be able to hold themselves in a dignified manner, and would be able to protect them, brace them from the storm where necessary. So there are, whenever we join an organization, there are these unsaid expectations that we tend to hold towards this one person of authority who we are reporting to. And it's so human for us to have these expectations.
True. True.
My invitation to anybody who is starting to work at a new space or even is currently working and is noticing that they are, let me use it as blankly or bluntly, they're not as charmed by their boss.
Mm.
And let's also be present too that you can hear a strong judgment inside about, yeah, how are how are they the way they are? And you might be spending endless evenings yapping about them, cribbing about them, or talking about how bad they are in
Mm.
not just the function where you might be dissatisfied with the function that they're doing, but you may also start to rant about pieces of their personality, which is they don't know how to present themselves, or they tend to backbite, or they tend to gossip, or other things that we may not be impressed by them beyond their role and function. I have had a chance to see that relationships can turn beautifully notches forward if we are willing to see the person beyond the personality traits they bring. And this is where I invite people to really see we may not like everybody that we work with, but can we objectively see that does the person provide you specifically what you need for to complete the job? And are you capable of understanding what they need from you to complete the job?
Beautifully
To be
said.
able to objectively separate the
Yeah.
requirement of the role and your human requirement. So your human requirement may be, I want to see somebody with example. Okay, that person was probably not cut out for it. But that was not agreed upon when you signed the organization, that you'll be given somebody with a set example. What you agreed upon was, I will complete this role and I will receive this information in advance. Those KPIs were put into place before you joined the organization. My invitation to people is to say, are you keeping your promise for what you really signed up for?
Yeah.
And when we get busy checking the checkbox for all the things that what we made promises for, shall I say, when you start to hold yourself to integrity of what was your promise for that relationship, what was your promise for that role and function, have you completely provided to it? And yet then you're still having a dissatisfied experience. All right, then let's come and talk and see how would you like to navigate the situation. What about this is just very difficult for you to tolerate? Is there a lack of, for instance, punctuality from their end, and you find
Mm,
it very difficult to manage because it impacts your work? All right, let's
yeah.
find a way to talk about it. Let's find a
Mm,
way to address this difficult conversation. So that's where I would encourage people to see, to differentiate the role, personality, and first check your promise, and then see, okay, what can I now ask as confirmation?
got it. So let's peel the epidermis a bit and say, you said going about, chasing people or getting their time or so on and so forth. Many a times, as people go senior, they become aggregators, right? And a lot of team members find it difficult to get time of their bosses to get things approved. They hit bottlenecks. Now, they would have had difficult conversations. They would have said, my work is getting impacted, so on and so forth, but not really yielded much of success. What would be your suggestions, couple of tips, if I may say so, to navigate such conversations when you hit a roadblock as far as time commitment is concerned, availability is concerned, bandwidth is concerned?
Got it. Sahil, because there was a little break in the voice, I'm rephrasing the question so that I
Sure,
ensure I got it right.
sure.
You're saying that you've really given everything to your boss, or pretty much given your best to the role as possible. You seem to be still hitting a roadblock when it comes to getting the boss to align with you.
You could
Um,
broad base it to that, that's fine. And specifically, alignment is great at a macro level. At a micro level, let's say alignment is there, but availability, bandwidth, time is a challenge. And therefore, you don't get enough face time, or you don't
mm,
get enough availability to get your approvals in place. That is becoming a roadblock. So how do you navigate the strategic part of it, which is alignment, and the tactical part of it, which is daily kind of approvals or sign-offs or face time?
yeah, okay. Thank you, Sahil. I got this now. If the specific need is I need more FaceTime with my boss and I'm not getting it, it could be indicative of certain red alerts, and we want to be careful about that. If you can notice that this person is generally not available for most people, if it seems to be a trend and pattern, then we don't want to worry too much about it, that it's not you who's causing it. But if you're generally sensing that they seem to be spending time with a lot of other professionals but not you, that could be a red alert for you. And in that case, we would want to approach it a little more delicate and careful. Let's consider that it's a full pattern. You can already see that they're barely available. Maybe they travel a lot, or they're just in meetings back to back, or you have a very remote culture of working. Therefore, it's difficult to just get FaceTime. And when you do, it's like a quick, what's the job? And you finish the conversation and you put the phone down. So you can sense that it's a little abrupt and the person is not available to have a little more reflective conversation. This is now where I'm inviting you to Ask yourself, how well do I know what works for this person? One question you want to clarify is, do I know which channel of communication works best for them?
Hmm.
Where are they most verbose? Are they most verbose when I pick up the phone and they have a long conversation? And they're verbose to their extent. They will give you their download. They may not have the patience to listen to you. I understand if it is. But check for, where are they most verbose? Are they more verbose on a phone call? Are they more verbose on a text message? Or are they more verbose on an email? Where do you see them hanging the most? Or it could be your office communicator chat, whichever you're using, Slack or any other. Where are they most verbose is the space where you want to be sending maximum information. And also, when you're choosing that channel, you want to be verifying with them. So I noticed that this is the place where you are most conversant, and therefore I'm using this channel to share all the necessary information with you. Trust that is okay with you, and leave it there. We don't necessarily want them to confirm. If they have a concern, they will let us know, but trust that is okay with you, and you leave it there. So that's my first invitation. Check for where are they most verbose. The second thing, which is a way of building connection with people where we notice that they may not be available, present. You can see they're too busy, is to find a way to appreciate them or give them credit. And I would say authentically.
Sure.
Be
That's the
very,
key
very
word, I
careful
guess.
about it.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's the
very
key word.
authentically.
Yeah.
Exactly. Appreciation and acknowledgement has a beautiful way of capturing attention that can really get heads to turn or people to just step back and say, oh, I'm not in a rush anymore. Let me just get a little more perspective. It's not like, oh, the person will be so flattered. I'm not coming from there. It's like a breath of fresh air.
Hmm.
And if you could offer that to somebody who's barely giving you airtime, it's a chance that they probably haven't been appreciated or acknowledged for everything that they are doing while the ship is running.
Yeah.
So if you could find a reason to do that, that would be great. These are my top two tips that I would love to give. Yeah.
Interesting. I love the way you're sticking to the power of two, which is very nice because you're giving nice perspectives on both ends of the spectrum. Um, let's complicate the situation a bit and look at a little bit more complexity, right? Many a times we see that, and we've also heard it, that your reputation precedes you, right? And the reputation may not be all of what you are or what you've done, but it's your reputation. It's a perception. They are preconceived notions. And maybe that's the lens that people view you from even before they've met you or even before they've interacted with you. Now, how is it that one can keep those on the side and say, hey, you know what? I may have heard a lot about this person, but let me experience it because now I'm in a working relationship with this person. Because many a times when you carry either the positive bias or the negative bias of everything that you've heard, it plays out in interactions, and then that also manifests itself in working relationships. So, what are your thoughts on picking that up? Having that information is good to have, but not letting it impact the interaction with the overpowering bias.
I like why you're asking that question, Sahil. It's just we're, s- we are the human mind which just gets so attracted to gossip and information that could tell us something bad about the other person and how they look off in some light. We get very attracted to it. Some form of it is very fulfilling. Yet, when we come across conversations which give us hints into somebody else's personality,
Mhm.
the first check I invite the person to do is, how credible do you find the source of that information?
True.
How reputed is the person who is sharing this information with you? And you also want to check for the nature in which that information is being shared. Does the information have elements of color that make the person look shaded? Or are there elements of facts that, I've sent 2 emails regarding a particular topic and I haven't heard a response in the last 1 week. So timelines is a concern for me in my experience. That's somebody giving you facts without coloring it
Yeah,
as that person doesn't even care to respond to emails and the person thinks he's this hoity-toity. Then you know it's colored.
correct.
So you want to check for where is the information coming from. Would you trust this person to write your letter of recommendation, whoever is giving you this piece of information? So the source matters significantly. The other intent that I'd like you to, the other route I'd like you to look at is you want to make sure you're not walking in with tinted glasses. So that's one way, check for where is the source. But to
Yeah.
make sure that the tinted glasses are not for real, is to, when you're in a conversation with the person, with hopefully you get a first one-on-one with your manager and you get an opportunity to share what you are looking forward to in the team. I'm inviting you to make that conversation more about them and less about you. And
Hmm.
I'm inviting you to have a focused conversation where you're not talking about what you want and what you would like, but you're more focused on, hey, what are the 3 things you think I should be doing so that you are aligned? What are the 3 things that you think I should be doing so that the work happens as necessary? Or what are the 3 things this month that you would like me to have my highest attention on? What would, at the end of January, should have happened so that you feel our work is on track? If you go with some objective questions towards them, you give them a chance to tell them what they're expecting of you. You take this information, of course, back and forth, but you take this information, you put it in a nice nutshell and say, thank you for this conversation. This is what I know I should be working on. I'm going to be actively in communication with you. And in that conversation, you've also figured what is the best channel of communication for you? Where do you have, where do you like information to flow to you from? And they would give you their best channels there. That little time where you've asked the questions and they've spoken gives you a sense of how well do I vibe and jive with this person. So I'm inviting you to take your decisions by the questions you ask and letting them respond.
Beautiful. And sometimes in the process of asking these questions, you may be very, very passionate and want to step up, right? And at times you may end up overstepping. How does one understand how much of step up is enthusiasm, is proactiveness, is being thoughtful about the future, is not just an order taker, but someone who applies his or her mind? And when do you cross that Lakshman Rekha to say, now this person is overstepping his role, overstepping her boundary, and you're going the wrong path, you're going south with your boss or with the stakeholder or with anybody else?
Right. Sahil, that situation I've noticed could happen in a few stages. And let's see one stage to the other. When you're new to the job, my invitation to us professionals would be to strongly observe and ask questions with genuine curiosity,
Mhm.
not with an underlying tone of sarcasm. If your
Can you give us an
questions come with,
example? Sorry to interrupt you, Mira, but can you give us an example? It'll be
sure. So
fantastic
when you,
if you tell us what would
absolutely.
curiosity look like and what would sarcasm look like, in any situation that maybe you've come across or you experienced.
Yeah, we were interns. This was Johnson and Johnson, and we were 3 of us together. And there was this investigators meeting that was to happen. It was a long, big. It's like a big event that happens, and then you're going to make sure everything is happening in order. And we're looking after the operations in the background. And the investigators are late by a good hour. And I recall one of the interns standing next to the boss says, "Is this how things run here?" That's sarcasm. And at the same time, the same opportunity, if we stepped up and we went and spoke to the manager, like, there's a situation, our investigators haven't arrived as yet. and we've got a couple of things on the agenda that need to happen. How do you suggest we manage this situation? That's curiosity, because you have a need that you would like fulfilled, you've called it out, and you're asking for direction, or you're asking for how do you suggest. So, getting the difference between curious questions and sarcastic tones can be a game changer.
Hmm.
Does that work?
Of course it does. Brilliant.
Great. So, at the beginning of your job and career, I would highly encourage curious questions and certainly ask questions which you know are towards helping you understand the situation better. If you are sensing, now this is where I invite people, how do you know you're crossing the line? This is where you bring a sense of watching the person's change of tone, change in body language when they're speaking to you or when you're speaking to them. If you notice that when you're talking to them or you're asking them certain questions, they tend to suddenly look around, or they tend to not look at you, or they tend to suddenly shuffle with their clothes, you sense discomfort. And this is where you want to check, is it worth digging? And therefore, you also want to have an extra phrase in hand to say, I hope I'm not overstepping. Please only share what you feel right about. So, having the awareness to know that your job is not to bring discomfort to the person, you may not be currently in a position to challenge the existing norms and the existing way of working. Yet curious, who takes responsibility for dash, or how do we work this when such consequences happen? These are those difficult questions that come up. And if you can sense that there's a change in the person's body language, you say, look, I don't want to overstep here. I am asking because I'm curious on how do we handle dash. I feel we have a lot of power to ask courageous and bold questions once you have established a certain amount of credibility in the system.
Sure.
Qualifying through the interview and arriving at your role is not credibility enough. You may carry laurels from your past organization. You might have walked in as a celebrity employee for whichever designation you joined at. But if we treat ourselves as cat's whiskers, it's not going to help the situation.
Mm.
So, therefore, the check that I invite, which is like a few months down, how much have I contributed? How have I supported the team, the manager, the organization? Also asking myself, how, I'm being careful when I say this, how well connected do I feel?
Mhm.
Have I networked beyond my manager and my colleagues? Have I created a little network where I have certain people from where I'm gathering robust information and perspective before I walk in or act like a rookie and just start talking? So I'm somebody who has done some research in the background, brought some perspectives, understood how things run here, and then asked a tough question as to what would it take us to do things differently? How can we find a way to do B instead of A? I would love to offer a plan, but I'm curious, would you be willing to try it out? So, your ability to give a debate, offer a perspective, comes with, of course, you having watched, you having served, and you having connected to the environment around you. So, inviting you to see if you have these three things in place, you're probably not overstepping, you're probably transforming things around you.
Fantastic. In the process of transformation, a very nice thing that you mentioned is also going to the boss and taking guidance. Now, many a times we see that smart, intelligent employees most of the times have the answers. They know what they have to do. But when you talk to them in the corridors, they say, hey, I'm just going to my boss to get an approval. And the approval is just to make the boss feel comfortable. Because if I have all the answers and I say I have all the answers, then my boss in that situation has nothing further to value add. and that could potentially also make the person feel insecure, make the person feel that he or she is not being consulted, so on and so forth. So is it a wise thing, if you have all the answers and you can simply go and execute it, still go to your boss and get an input and then go ahead, or just bounce off the idea, or just do an FYI? Where do you balance it? Because some people get um, acclaimed for actually saying, oh, we discussed this, you went ahead, and then they get appreciated very quickly. And then there are some people who know it, solved it, and tell the boss, this is a problem, I've solved it. And the boss says, yeah, okay, you've solved it, great. What next, right? So what's a smarter way to navigate such situations, so that if at all there's credit due, or you want to be on the right side of your boss, so that your boss is well aware and can then acknowledge, appreciate you in forums or in rooms that you're not present? Is that the right thing to do? Or if you just know something, do it, and there's no need to tom-tom about yourself under the garb of getting guidance from someone when you don't need it because you know the solution?
Right,
I know
right.
6, 7 questions in one question, but you can dissect it into 2 parts or 4 parts, but would love to hear your perspective.
I hear that, Sahil. And I like the way you asked because it really brought in different dimensions of looking at it. That it's not just about the conversation that happens between the employee and the boss, it's also about how does it get portrayed, projected? Where else does that conversation get talked about? So I am with you. I'm very moved by the lines from this book. It's by Robert Greene. It's called 48 Laws of Power. It's
Mhm,
doing the rounds again for the second time across 20 years. One of the rules, one of the laws of power is never outshine your boss.
mhm.
And the depth through which Robert Greene explains it in the book is phenomenal. I would highly encourage people to at least get a chance to read that expert.
Right.
But that's where, before we walk towards, how does it get projected outside, the first check I want you to have is, uh, do you feel like you're playing a power game with your boss? If you feel like you're playing a power game with your boss, my invitation to you is, what can you do to strengthen the relationship? When two individuals, for instance, choose to stay together, partners, spouses, if there is a sense of competition between them two, it would be very difficult for them to manage and survive together. And I'm using the word survive. I mean, we're not even walking towards thrive. I'm saying survive
Yeah. Where
because
was
we're
it? Yeah.
we're competing.
True.
And I understand that with partners or with spouses, we say, oh, we're like equals, we're not supposed to be competing, etc. But with a boss, and so I come from another space where it's Adlerian psychology. There's a wonderful book, again, I'd love to quote. It's called The Courage to be Disliked.
Mhm.
It's by these two Japanese authors, fabulous book. I wish I had written it. The book speaks wonderfully about how when you are working closely with people, it's one thing to come with the conditioning that this person is competition to me. But instead, could you deliberately invest in the relationship such that you have now turned this person into a comrade where you support them and they support you? So, a comrade, a buddy, a best friend. Okay, best friend is a strong connotation, but somebody who would stand for you or would contribute to your success, and similarly, vice versa.
Strong ally.
Precisely, strong ally. So, my invitation to you would be to could you work towards turning your relationship with your manager to that space where your manager feels utmost safety and comfort with you? That they could, if I may say, really shed their skin in front of you and compare and talk about, even if they have an urge to gossip and you may have a little judgment about it, but can they come absolutely bare and find comfort and space where you wouldn't leak anything outside or use anything against them? When you create that sense of safety, if at any opportunity you get recognized for something, your boss wouldn't worry so much if the credit was not given to them. There is generally a sense of safety around you, and experience isn't that you're going to take away their job. So I need you to see that when you feed it from here, the competition is not a problem anymore.
True.
But if the relationship is not as strong yet, the credibility is not established as yet, which usually takes a good 5-6 months into an organization. If you're still blending with the group and people, how much of face time you had with your manager, the team, all of that matters. With remote teams, this process takes even longer, up to a year often. If the credibility is not established enough, if the sense of rapport isn't established enough, then my invitation, we're going to take all the opportunity for everything that comes your way to certainly have credits go back to the manager as well as the team. And acknowledge them for specifics. Acknowledge them for, I appreciate the empowerment I felt when I was managing this. Be real. If you really have done it, you have done it independently. But I appreciate the empowerment that came from my boss, and he or she gave me so much of free space to play that I could offer as much. Thank you for that safety. So you're acknowledging them for it. That's what I would say.
Nice. I think moving to the next dimension, I think a lot of people would have reached out to you. Many have, of course, reached out to me as well in different stages of their career, whether it's early career, mid career, is finding it difficult to say no, right? Because you want to be the yes man, you want to be around, you want to be popular, you want to be available, you want to be the right hand, whatever may be the situation. And then, of course, that takes a toll in different forms and shapes, whether professionally or personally, as being perceived as someone who is the boss's right hand, or personally where you don't have enough time for family because you're just saying yes all the time. So how does one find it comfortable to say no? And the second is, if I may, how do you say no without actually saying no? Right? So two questions. I'm just following your pattern of two. So two questions. One is, how do you say no? And how do you say no without actually saying no?
I'm going to try for the second one, and we'll see how
Sure.
that goes.
We're in it together. So let's figure it
Yes.
out.
Let's jump to the first one where you said, how do you say no? When we look at this conversation, let's understand the gravity of the situation.
Very important.
There's a little line that helps us determine, does the situation require me to be assertive? Or does this situation require me to be prepared for a difficult conversation and therefore very tentative in my way of speaking? And the line that helps us separate it is defined by the difficult conversation gets defined. Is it high stakes? Are there differing opinions? And are their emotions high? So these three situations, stakes, emotions, differing opinions, determine that it is a difficult conversation. So there could be a conversation around something that you're principally just not okay with and you want to say no to it, but the other side is pushing it. It's like, no, this is how we do it and this is how we're going to send it forward. It could be sometimes just an operational thing, but sometimes it could be for you something that has high stakes involved for other people. So this therefore becomes a tough conversation, a difficult conversation, different path to take. But if we were to quickly say no to somebody, I think the first question that we want people to ask is, are you able to identify the situations where you need to say no?
Mm-hmm.
Several times we're not able to identify the situations which we need to say no to. We have been as a routine offering ourselves to over time. We have as a routine been offering ourselves over weekends. We have as a routine been doing work for that manage the load of two other people. We've just been doing it.
It's normalized now. It's just
Precisely.
normal to do it. If you don't do it, then there is something not right with you. So,
Precisely. And that's why the first lesson for all of us to check is, what is workable for me? What would I like? What would I like to work on? How long would I like to work on something? Does this fulfill me? Can I just be clear about what I like? I mean, I know I'm doing 5 other things right now, but can I be clear on what would I like? And can I define that? then can I structure that? Learning that what is it that I need? I'm boiling down to this, Sahil. Awareness of, in any given situation, what is it that I'm feeling and what is it that I need? If I can be clear about these two things, I will find the voice to ask for what I need. Whether I
Beautiful.
need support, whether I need resources, whatever you need, can you define it? This awareness clicks in and helps us walk towards assertiveness. If you were to verbalize your saying no to somebody, and let's consider that somebody is asking you to work on a Saturday, which was a planned day for you and your family. So let's get this straight. You're very sure that you have, when somebody comes with a request, hey, I'd like you to be on a Saturday. So you want to check in with yourself. What am I feeling? Okay, this certainly unsettles me. I am feeling disturbed and partly anxious because I had plans with my family, or I had promised something, or I had taken the time and promised to myself that I will go on this meditation retreat, whatever it was. Maybe it was
It
self,
was
maybe it was
important to you. Absolutely.
it was
Yeah.
important to you. And this is also a place where we have to coach people to say, hey, if it's important to you, you have to still let it stay on the list. You
Right.
cannot let it keep sliding off that, oh, it's about me, I can adjust. No.
It's like a complete veto, right? Because we don't keep ourselves on top priority, and therefore anything that comes above it automatically just slips down. So you're absolutely right.
Precisely. So, awareness of what is it that I'm feeling and what is it that I need, and then finding the courage to express what you need is where we say the assertiveness comes in.
Right.
And this conversation takes practice because it's not just about saying, hey, this is what I need or this doesn't work for me. Um, Not having to justify it, but sharing information as had it been any other Saturday, I would have tried my best. This one particularly, I have plans with family which I would not want to cancel. So, using words that say, not making you sound helpless like I can't, but more like, no, I wouldn't want to choose that today. I'd like to take this call. But do remember, you can reach out to me for anything in the future. So, when you end your conversation with a but, and I'm available in the future for this work on a Monday, or but how about I come early in on Monday and I offer dash 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 to you, or but how about before you close this finally I get a chance and give my 30-minute review on it. So you're offering options
You're not
and not
closed
really
to
putting
things
it closed door.
completely. Yeah. You're
Yeah.
also available to say not right now, but maybe later, but maybe in a different capacity, so on and so on. Got that.
Yes, yes,
Super.
yes, precisely.
Mira, I know we're on top of the hour, but I would have loved to continue this. In fact, I would love to if I have your permission. I don't know whether you have time on hand or not, but if you do, can we extend this by another half hour? Because there is so much that I would love to ask you. And either we can break this up into another episode, another hour with you, or if you have half an hour, maybe we just go on. What works for
Silent
you?
time check. I am okay to go for another half an hour.
You're okay to
Yes,
go? Super, lovely.
yes, yes.
I think the next thing that also happens is when you've really overstepped, right? Or you have got into a zone where you believe that I shouldn't have said this, or I should have said it better, or my tone was not right. At times, you also receive silent treatment. How do you deal with silent treatment? Because a lot of people get very anxious when suddenly the boss goes quiet, the boss goes into a cocoon, the boss decides to step back or maintain silence. So, if you're in a situation like that, how do you deal with silent treatment?
Sahil, I'm also picking up from where you said earlier that you sense that you said something that led to that behavior.
Sure.
So you're able to actually pinpoint that you were
Yeah.
possibly
That's the
not.
easier one. At times, maybe you don't even know, you're not aware. That's the more difficult situation. So, we'll talk about both. Again, two aspects. So, let's talk about both.
Yeah, this is going to be like the yeah, with the magic of two.
The magic of
Um,
truth.
if you specifically know that you said something and that caused things to be a little abrupt, the person's not receiving you in any way, um, this is my invitation, whether through text or in person. In person, best. But in some form, You need to communicate this. Now, before I go to the part of communication, I'm sharing the work that we do with professionals when we're coaching them to ensure that there is absolute alignment between them and their managers or the key stakeholders. And that often means doing a lot of cleanup. The cleanup involves where were promises broken? Where is there lack of alignment? Where are
Trust
you out of
deficit.
integrity?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, first level, just cleaning all of that up. So this is where this muscle gets exercised the most for professionals is to go have a straight conversation and, shall I say, own up to your behavior. So if you're thinking, oh, I can buy this person donuts and bring them coffee the next day and everything's going to be nice and normal, I'm inviting you to dial up your ability to have a confronting conversation. And the
Mm.
confrontation is more for you, but it really begins from stepping in and owning up to where you faltered. I also train people to be able to say this without necessarily saying sorry,
Mm.
unless you know that what you said has deeply hurt the other person.
Sure.
You might have done something which was a little abrupt or was a little uncalled for. It didn't exactly hurt people's emotions, but people found it inappropriate. So you want to be able to check, did it hurt somebody? Oh, yeah, I'm deeply sorry regarding my actions. I take responsibility for it. I wish I had not done it. And I want to now make a clear check that I take good care of this in the future. So going forward and sharing your apology, but being very clear, does this need a sorry or not? And if it doesn't need exactly a sorry, but going back with the conversation saying, hey, dash happened. Dash happened could be, I recall the moment when I said dash and I realize how the room just fell silent. I realize the impact of that in that moment. So this is where I'm inviting people to be very clear that just saying, hey, you know what, I'm a little sorry about what happened. Or can we just move forward from there? No. You've got to call out what happened. You want to acknowledge the impact of that. What was the impact of it on your manager? I'm sure you were quite taken aback by what happened. I'm sure you weren't expecting it. Or I'm sure this didn't let us look good as a team in front of others. There must have been an impact, and I want you to get present to it. What did that person go through as an experience? Call it out.
Mhm.
So, John, when I said dash or when dash happened, I sensed the change in the room. I see the impact of it on you. I can only imagine what you might be thinking in that moment. I take responsibility for it. That's a key statement. I take responsibility for it.
Very
Because
powerful.
you really, right, you really want to let the other person know. And give me a moment, I'm taking a little detour. The word responsibility, often in the corporate parlance, gets treated as who's to blame.
Hmm.
It's like something goes off, and up comes this person in authority and says, who's responsible for this?
Where
And
do I
then you
find
can,
my skill?
yeah, and then you can sense, oh my God, that's it, I'm gone. Whoever was the
Yeah.
ordained person to look after that aspect
Yeah.
is, I
Yeah.
that's it, I'm not going to survive this.
You're just killing psychological safety right there for not just the individual, but for everyone else, saying that, hey, I make a mistake and I'm going to get slaughtered.
Yeah, yeah. So the word responsibility tends to have a fearful connotation to it.
Yeah.
And I would like to acknowledge Sadhguru in his book Inner Engineering beautifully helps break down the word responsibility. So he says the word broken into two parts is response and ability. When you call out that I am responsible for something, you are taking onus of the fact that you have the ability to respond to the situation. You're not going and sitting in a cocoon. You're not going and just putting a blanket on the situation, not talking about it, ignoring it, or just passing by it like time will heal itself. You're saying, stepping in and saying, I take responsibility for the situation because you're choosing to respond to what happened.
True.
It is not about I'm taking the blame.
Mm.
And then you're also taking on this call that you are going to watch this going forward. There are managers who get handovers and they get not so great handovers. The previous person has already left the organization and you're like on a project, and in 2 days something broke bad, and you're sitting with stakeholders on the other side and they are, mm, I'm using the word nasty.
Soft word.
And it can terrorize you to have to go through this experience, and there's a little voice in your head that says, I don't deserve this. This is
Mm.
not my mess to handle. Why am I having to deal with this when I got a handover 2 days ago? Where's my boss? Why? But having the dignity and presence of mind to be on that call and take it as it comes, taking full responsibility and saying, I take full responsibility for what happened, and I'd like to share with you the plan forward on how we can address this. I understand the impact on you, and I completely acknowledge that it's not the easiest experience. As a company, I feel for you.
Mm.
Taking responsibility from here, can I share with you what we can do as next steps?
True.
That would be your way of saying, I'm in it.
Yeah.
Can you please hold and have faith and trust that I'm not here to defend and run away, that we didn't do our job right? I could have less information. Maybe I have points of defense, but I have less information right now. So let me just take this in and say, hey, I'd like a second follow up so that I have more information and I can share where this comes from.
Yeah.
Anyhow, going back to, um,
Where
you
we
know some,
digress. Yeah.
yeah, you know something already between you and your manager. So you want to go back and you want to take responsibility for what you said, and it doesn't end there. So this happened. I can see the impact of it on you. I take responsibility for it. Going forward, I have learned my lesson. Or going forward, I know that I will be watchful, etc., etc. That's it. So it's like primarily 4 sentences. And then you switch to them and you say, is there anything you'd like me to know?
Mm.
Or is there anything you'd like to share with me right now? And once you say that, you want to like pause,
Yeah.
silent pause, because you want to now give them the space to, where do I even begin? So if you said you're taking responsibility, you're going to have all that lash come in. That's the reason we don't walk into confronting conversations, because we don't want to take that lash. We don't want to take the murky stuff that comes up. Maybe some random other examples might get posted in that conversation which are not very true or whatever.
Yeah. Maybe you're
But you're
opening
there.
just a box of worms. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It could open a can of worms. You're right. And that's the part where I love to hold people close and say, you know, please know that you're doing this because you want to strengthen the relationship.
Mm.
Please know that the intention behind us having this conversation is that you want to make the other person experience safety with you, and you also want to reach a place of safety with this person. For that, cleaning up this muck, this unsaid elephant in the room, is necessary.
Mm.
If there's a situation where you have no idea what's happening, but you can see your boss is ignoring, then we call out their behavior. I would invite you to not jump to assumptions. And if you are assuming that it may be something, then I want you to specifically call out and say, so this I highly recommend do in person, avoid texting. But if the person's just not showing up, there's a lag, then be very careful in your text and say, let's say the person's name is John. You say, John, there's something on my mind and I wanted to share it with you. I noticed that you and I are barely meeting face to face. I noticed that our conversations have significantly dwindled. I am wondering what has caused this, as I have enjoyed our rapport. I sense it may have been dash incident, but I don't want to go in circles thinking about this. Please help me understand. Can we have a conversation to know what are you feeling and what are you thinking? I will wait to hear from you.
Beautiful.
That needs to go out.
Yeah. I think many people, Mira, don't even get down to doing that under the fear of what will happen if I stir the hornet's nest, right? Many people do that, but still get silent treatment, and then over a period of time, don't end up doing it anymore. I think the whole fact of concluding that this is now a dysfunctional relationship is the easiest thing to do, and getting another job or stepping away or just living in your cocoon is the easiest thing to do. How does one really say that, listen, there is an elephant in the room and it's important that we call it out? How does one get down to doing that? Because you and I can talk about it, hundreds of people may listen to it, but it may not be enough for them to take action. So,
Hmm.
what's going to be that innate voice when they hear this video that makes them say, hey, immediately after this podcast, I'm going to pick up the phone and I'm going to take time, or I'm going to pick up the phone and I'm going to fix a meeting for tomorrow or day after or next week. And I have three people who I need to sort this out with because it's just been lingering on and I never paid attention to it. And if I
Yeah.
do, it'll be a much better space to be in rather than just letting it be dysfunctional. How do we get to that level of getting people to pick up the phone and have those conversations?
Some beautiful lines I've heard, and I can't recall the source. The lines are more like, when the pain of the present gets so difficult to bear, do the people walk towards the pain of change?
Hmm, interesting.
So, the question for those people who are really considering, they're sitting at the fence and wondering, should I go have that conversation with my friend, with my colleague, with my manager, or whoever it is, that you know that there's something in the middle, but I haven't confronted it, or I'm sensing it's. The question you want to ask yourself is, how much is it killing you? For many of us, we tend to just put it under the blanket. Apart from being a communication coach, I also practice batch flower therapy. I am a certified therapist who works with people to help understand key feelings, thoughts, and behaviors that are coming in the way of them finding fulfillment, finding themselves best at what they're doing, being present, overcoming anger, sadness, all of those situations that tend to hold us back from a full self expression. And one thing we notice is that the ones who aren't willing to confront are often the ones who also face sleep issues.
Hmm.
So, literally, if I may help you map, if we have a tendency to not confront, one of the places where the pain is visible is that you find it difficult to sleep, literally. There are actually other body physiology things that happen too that determine that mentally and emotionally something is amiss. We would broadly call it, we have a worrying mindset, but on the surface we don't show it because I don't want to bring stuff from back and beyond to the surface. I would just like it to be hunky dory, nice, all's good, everything's well, pleasure to have
Platonic,
met.
let it go on. Yeah.
Yes, yes, precisely. So those can be that can be the pain that I'm inviting you to look at. I personally remember feeling the pain of losing a friend because I made the mistake of sharing a secret with somebody else, and I was sharing it, at least in that moment, I thought rightfully so, as a form of defense,
Hmm.
as the evangelist in me may feel and justify. But there were repercussions. And I remember
Right.
how hurt my friend was.
Mm.
And I remember in that moment, I did say, give my apologies. But the naiveness of me, like this is back in college, and the naiveness in me and the way I did it, it was more defensive and less apologetic and really holding the person's space and taking full onus and giving the person time to heal. And then coming back again to say, hey, I would like to check in and see, have I been forgiven? I'd like to check in and see, can you and I hang out again as buddies? I missed to do all that. Then she went to a different college. I went to a different college. So it just kind of went places. Um, So I'm with the experience that it's a difficult thing to do. I'm with the experience that we don't find ourselves naturally adept at it. But I believe it's learnable, and you would be willing to learn it and implement it if you can sense that the pain of the loss of that relationship is now showing up.
You know, as you've been talking about pain, I went back to all the moments in my life that I experienced a lot of pain and grief. And now, in retrospect, we always say that we are wiser. But in that moment, one of the crossroads that I was at was, does this pain need a band aid and first aid, or does this pain need surgery?
Mm.
Now, how does one differentiate? Because, of course, you may say there's pain, and like the way you said, you may say, listen, I want to have a conversation, I want to check in, and I want to say sorry if you really hurt the person. But at times, you realize that saying sorry is not as much for the other person as it is for your own peace. But maybe that's just first aid. Maybe you'll have a repeat of that sorry 10 more times because you're not curing something that is deep within you that's leading to repeat behavior. So, how does one differentiate when you spend time with pain? Is it a bandage therapy or is it surgery that's needed?
You answered the question yourself, Sahil. You used the magical word pattern. And, I'm reminded of this lovely sequence of events. You might have seen this movie, Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara.
Yeah.
And um, Farhan Akhtar is this person who has really given Hrithik Roshan I don't remember the names of the characters, so I'm calling out the names of the heroes themselves. Where Hrithik Roshan is holding beef with Farhan Akhtar for for not for taking off his girlfriend, or not really closing the loop on that situation, or saying, hey, you took my girlfriend and I'm not okay with it, and he's justifying it like, hey, I've already said sorry to you. And you can see this banter happening between them. And then finally, later in the movie, there is this experience where Farhan really goes through the pain of what it means to have a loss.
Yeah.
And it was not through losing a relationship with a girlfriend or sorts, but it was more like the pain that he went through with his father.
Yeah.
But he went through immense pain, and he sensed that pain, and he's like, I really can sense what you went through that day. So that's the conversation where he really practices, I get the impact on you. Like, he could really call out the impact of, hey, I can see the impact on you, I can feel it today, I know what you went through, I'm sorry. That scene speaks volumes about how do we identify that did this need a band-aid, or is this something that needs surgery? Is when you said, are we noticing us have a similar pattern? The check that I wanted to do was, am I making the same mistake again and again? Am I leaking information that belongs to somebody else to somebody else? Have I
That's
become this person? And if I
yeah.
may confess as vulnerably, I had a pattern, and I
Mhm.
could justify it. I
Beautifully.
could justify it,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I had a pattern. And, deep rooted for me, like, of course, that needed surgery. And I've significantly worked on myself over the last few years. But that pattern where information that's not yours is going to somebody else, and you're not even taking complete responsibility for it, impacted two significant relationships. So when you notice there's a pattern, it is a strong sign that there is a deep need inside that is not fulfilled for you. And if you don't find a way to fulfill that need, this pattern is going to keep happening.
It keep repeating itself.
Yeah, yeah. So, invitation to sit with a therapist if you can. But there are lots of reflective ways, journaling, mindfulness, that allows you to look deeper into that we say call our shadow side,
Yeah.
and helps us see what is it that I need to heal here so that I don't go around repeating the same pattern. Because a lot of professionals sometimes have patterns of finding the same kind of boss.
Very true. Because
Yeah.
although you start dealing with the pain or you start dealing with the toxicity, and then it appears more like a known devil versus
Yeah.
going to someone else where you don't really know it. I think we spoke about impact, and I think as leaders, as managers, identifying impact on a balance sheet is very easy. Identifying results changing your metrics is very easy because it's in black and white. How does one really evaluate the impact of relationships at work? You said something, you met someone, you stayed silent when someone wanted you to have their back. And as you said, it's very convenient to say, I'll get up to fight another day, or let the day pass, or over a period of time, this person will come back or turn around. How do you just measure impact of what is not tangible or what is not in black and white? Because human beings are the most complex machine. So
Yeah. For something so not tangible, we're going to try to find a way to measure it. Yeah. So this is a conversation that happens in the coaching conversations. You may be aware of this word called social capital,
yeah.
and it's used differently in different situations. In this specifically, when I'm particularly helping people getting a better understanding of the power of networking, we look at social capital as, let's consider that this other person in your network is a bank. And the amount of deposit that you do in this bank determines your social capital with that person. What are deposits like? The quality time that you spend with them, your availability to them as support for something, your ability to help something happen for them, connecting them to somebody, getting some work done for them, being available for service. In what form and fashion have you contributed to them? So we'll call it your social capital with that person. Now, if social capital is being built simultaneously across relationships, and let's specifically look at your colleagues, you want to keep checking in. How much have I contributed to them? And a way to put a little number to it. When I work with my coaches, we put their key stakeholders and the key team members on an Excel sheet.
Mhm.
And on the next column, we literally ask, what's the depth in this relationship? And we score it between 1 to 3. So, a score of 1 is I can pick up the phone right now and give this person a call. Even if it's not work, I can just pick up the phone and give this person a call. That's a 1. That means the social capital is doing really well. A 2 is in the work context, I can pick up the phone and give this person a call, and things are neutral. There's no bad air. We're in a good place. I think it's not like I serve them, they serve me. We're okay. There's not been like oh my God, I could give my life for this person. That's not been the moment. But it's a professional relationship and we're in good terms. The number 3 is you are thinking twice before giving them a call. There is some hesitation inside about what are they thinking of me, or there is some judgment that I'm going to face something I'm not going to like.
Yeah.
That determines the strength of your relationship. So the question you want to ask yourself is, how have I contributed to the social capital being the way it is, and what can I do to shift it around if it really matters to me?
Makes sense. Let's spend some time talking about feedback. I think that's a very, very important component of managers, of leaders. So while everything is going great, you may be at number 1 and you can say, I can pick up the phone and I can say, how are things? How was your weekend? Did you go for Coldplay or did you go here or what's up? And suddenly it's the year-end time and you don't get a rating that you thought you should have got. And you don't get the promotion that you expected, that you put out there in terms of saying, I'm looking at the year to turn out this way. And while there may be reasons, while there may be facts, at a feeling level, you feel that you have been let down. Now, in such a situation, and the relationship starts getting strained, how does the boss cover that distance? How does a team member soak in what's coming their way to mend such a relationship? Because At the end of the day, while there may be an expectation mismatch, there's been enough and more communication to say not happening. But the individual was still hoping against hope, because saying, you know what, the boss is on speed dial, we hang out as friends outside of work, whatever, whatever.
If you've actually had signs where, your relationship was sitting as a one on the social capital, and you have had feedback that came and hit you like you weren't expecting it, or you were really expecting it to be better, then I would really say I don't think you got the social capital right.
Reevaluate, number one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not as
Because
much as disconnect, Mira, but it's more about saying at a feeling level, you're let down. So mentally,
hmm,
cognitively, you may be in alignment with, let's say, 80% of what feedback you've got. 20% you can discount, right? 80% you're in agreement with what's coming your way. But at a feeling level, and given that you coach a lot of people as well, not just in communication, but otherwise as well, at a feeling level, the feeling of being let down, the feeling of my family would want to see me at that level. I'm not at that level. My peer group is ahead of me, and this promotion meant the world to me. I know I'm not there, but then there are so many people out there also who are not there, but they are making it because maybe their managers are slightly more lenient, and your yardstick as a manager is even more stringent. So it's not about the cognitive part of it, it's about the relationship getting strained more at a deeper feeling level.
right. While I hear you speak, Sahil, I hear that the person is feeling discouraged for whatever effort they took, is also feeling disappointed in the result and the outcome, and had an aspiration of having accomplished a title or an award or something that acknowledges that they have moved forward in career progress. And while they are dealing with this experience, the people involved can often appear like villains. So, therefore, the animosity with the manager, that's the person who wrote my report. Could he not have put in just a few words of villainous in them? And it's so human of us to have these thoughts of animosity. The first part, when I want to look at this from, is it's understandable that we get discouraged and disappointed and we feel as negative about the situation and circumstances. But there's something that I got a chance to learn, and I try to keep it so close to me, is because disappointments and discouragement is, I can show you my life story as well. But there are these few lines that really stay close to me, and I try to keep it as a way of life now. Our tendency to hold on to the discouragement and the disappointment is so much stronger when we come from, I'm using the word carefully, achiever's mindset.
Hmm.
I'm here to achieve. I'm here to achieve.
Yeah,
All I do is
yeah,
achieve.
yeah.
Therefore, the breakdowns, the roadblocks, especially the ones where you feel most helpless in, you feel like, oh, I don't have a way of turning this around. Oh, it's rubbish. Oh, it's like, why is this happening to me? I'm an achiever. Why is this happening to me? So we tend to go around in circles, blaming ourselves, blaming the system, blaming people. Usually, the word achievement is used in a positive connotation, but I'd like you to see the shadow side of the achiever's mindset
Yeah.
that does not let you move away from the identity of being an achiever.
Hmm.
Inviting us to consciously switch and look at the opportunity as, oh, it's a breakdown that I'm experiencing, and wow, what an opportunity for me to now pick myself up and figure how to be a better version. We call this the learner's mindset,
True.
that every obstacle that you hit, you will start to see patterns, you start to see what is a one off, you start to see which is high gravity, and you start to see, okay, what is my learning in this? So, a journaling question, great for reflection, is what did I learn today?
Yeah.
What did I learn about myself? What did I learn out there today? Where am I learning? What am I learning? So, my invitation to people who are going through these heartbreaks, and I am with you, been there, felt it, and I'm holding you close. We're in it together. And while you're going through it, please feel the pain, let the pain be. We're in no rush. Mourn your loss, but I'm sure you'll resurrect. And when you do, you'll have the opportunity to get those tinted glasses off where you were blaming yourself or blaming the system and blaming the people. Mourn that, and then let's get up and start asking questions. So, if not within that same appraisal conversation, but if you get an opportunity again within a week or however sooner, a conversation with the manager again and say, hey, I've personally found the appraisal disappointing for myself. And I'm starting to see that there were certain spaces which I didn't see coming. So I take responsibility for it. I want to make sure that I really turn this around next year or within the next few months, preferably within 6 months, and look at a mid year. I want to hear from you. What are the three things you would like me to bring maximum focus to so that I can turn this around? Or what are three things you want to make sure happen that would help me turn this around? What are the two things that you want to make sure I'm not seen doing or is certainly not happening? Maybe some information is already available from the past appraisal. And you could
Right.
be contributing and saying, I'm making sure that I'm learning, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that, I'm certainly doing this. But I want to hear from you. What is it that you think I should do? This is again where you're stepping up, you're partnering, they're a comrade. So, two parts. Yes, please feel the pain, stay with the pain, mourn the loss. Step two, please dust it off. Let's get on with the learning.
Wonderful. Two more questions because I don't want to ask for another 1 hour from you, but we'll have two more questions and very quickly get your perspective. Um, Something that has always been very perplexing is about how do you balance authenticity with strategy? How much do you tell your boss versus what you shouldn't be telling your boss? So, what is strategic enough for your boss to know? Where should you hold back to say, okay, I know this, but I don't think everything needs to go out because, like you said, later on it was a different context with a friend in a college, but at the workplace, um, where do you say that, oh, my boss needs to know this, and even though I may have been told something in a corridor conversation or over drinks on a Friday night, but it is important for my boss to know, versus saying, hey, you know what? I don't think my boss needs to know this because this is just amongst us.
Beautiful, beautiful. Um, let's get some simple rules in place. If there's something that directly um, hampers what's happening on the project within the next 2 to 3 days, and you have some specific information on, for instance, a task not getting completed. Um, so these are red alerts. The care and concern with which you bring it forward needs to come as I'm being careful when I'm sharing this information with you. I am aware through a conversation that Dash may be getting impacted. I wouldn't want to raise an alarm unnecessarily. For the sake of the project, could you help please look into this? You're coming from a commitment towards the project, not wanting to
Right.
put a finger on anybody, not name anybody. Sometimes it seems like no matter what I do, even if I raise the slightest alarm, it will put a finger on somebody. And this is where I would want you to be very, very careful of what's your credibility in the system? How much have you built a rapport with your manager? How much can you come into and say, this might put a finger on someone, but I'm trying to give this information without putting a finger on someone because what I'm hearing is tentative. So calling it out to the vulnerability it is. And that's the authenticity that you're bringing. Where are we being strategic? I don't want to talk about every blooper that's happening in the background. I don't want to talk about every single place that I'm learning unless I am asked to talk about what am I learning. if I am projecting what I'm learning, I'm going to find a wise way to put it forward. So I'm learning that this needs to happen. I'm also learning what are the essentials that need to go into the packaging. If you made a blooper and you managed it at your end, it doesn't need to show up. If there is something happening in the background, there is chaos, but you have a sense that you can manage it with the team support, with things in order, with a straight conversation with somebody else, again, it doesn't need to show up.
Right.
So awareness of what is it that I know I have the ability to control, and therefore keeping it silent till an opportune moment arises, and probably having a conversation over the weekend to say, bringing it to your attention that there was a little back and forth that happened, but it's been addressed and we're in a good place. So if you need any details, I'll share them with you, but I just want you to know all is good. Yeah.
Got it. The last question. As much as I would love to continue, but the last question. I think we spent an hour and a half talking about how do you get your boss to fall in love with you, not literally though, but a lot of facets of that. Of course, a couple of more thoughts come to mind, but maybe we park that for another day. I think it's important to also, as we started off saying, the power of two, focus on the dark side, right? Many times we see, more so in the recent past, many people being subject to corporate bullying. And as much as they may want to raise a voice, they are silenced. As much as they may want to go out there and share aspects that are bothering them or have difficult conversations, they've had limited success. What are your thoughts? The easiest thing is to quit and say, my mental peace is most important, so let me quit. But when someone who is being subject to corporate bullying, how does that person bail themselves out?
Sahil, I'm sure you're sharing this question from some part experience. As we've all walked corporate careers, we've got a chance to see, either experience it in person or see it.
Yes, and I think also I want to call out a lot of these things while you were sharing them. A lot of these questions have come in from people from various walks of life saying, "You're talking to Mira. We would love to know more about this." So I'm
Thank you.
sure this will resonate with many others as well.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate the confidence that people have in this conversation that we're uncurling together.
Yeah, and as we are talking, you can see someone's just commented as well, Chandrama De. Thank you so much, Mira.
Thank you,
So many
Chandrama.
aspects were so beautifully explained.
Really appreciate it. When we talk about bullying, I'm reminded of my daughter's current experience. She's in grade 6. And I did not realize how intense the experience is for her. She isn't being bullied directly, but she has had a chance to see two of her classmates get bullied
Mhm.
often. And, I heard her talk about it, and I was under the impression that it'll get handled. Till one day I just saw my daughter break down. And the gravity of it hit me that it's not just the perpetrator and the victim, but even the person observing who experiences the toxicity of it. So, bullying certainly speaks volumes about the culture. It's like code red. It's there, but you can't see it. And it's there yet. Everyone knows that's how it is. When we find ourselves in an environment like that, the first invitation is to check if this has shown up for me, what is the lesson for me here now? If I am facing the brunt of it, what is the lesson for me here? Does the lesson have anything to do with what have I done to have this relationship be such that this person chooses to bully me? How have I contributed to the situation to arrive where it has? What have I possibly not said no to? Where have I not stood ground earlier? I want to go back and reflect on all those places that has encouraged this behavior. I'm not asking you to take the blame on yourself. I'm asking you to reflect. Where have we unconsciously allowed the water to flow that way? That allows us to learn, these are the places I want to now start voicing. I am with you holding hands together for those of you who have voiced it and immediately felt the brunt, where you might have been shunned, you might have experienced a strong blame for something else which you didn't even do, but it was like a major allegation that came your way. You're noticing yourself having to sit on a different table because others are just not willing to speak to you. That is an example of the kind of bullying that happens in the mature corporate world. And therefore, the question you want to ask yourself is, in this environment where I'm finding it difficult to find a close set of comrades, is there anyone who I can sit with and be with? If you are finding a team of people, that means you're doing relatively better. But if you're slowly and slowly finding it difficult to find a team of people, this is an invitation that the cultures really spread far. And that's why my invitation to you, I know it's not an easy conversation. These conversations take time, but I wouldn't want you to give up without having raised your voice, particularly towards the HR. And when I say raised your voice, I mean raise an appeal. You would have enough examples to say, Mira, but it doesn't change anything. Nobody really listens. Eventually we have to quit and go. My invitation, let's quit for sure. All right, I'm with you. We will quit. Can we quit with dignity? Can we quit with, I wanted to share with you that my reasons for choosing to terminate, or I'm seriously considering terminating my position because I'm experiencing behavior dash, dash, dash. It's important to voice it at least once before we say, I'm walking out. I hope that helps.
Of course it does, but the kid in me in a candy shop is still not going to let you go, and I'm going to give you a surprise element, which is a rapid fire. So most of your answers were very, very insightful. You took the time to explain, get into the details, which is where a lot of people have also been saying it in the comments on the chat, saying deeper aspects. You've given them something to take forward, take ahead at a very different level. And now is the time to switch gears, Mira. No answer more than 30 seconds. I don't have a hamper, but the next time we meet, coffee's on me.
Thank
But
you.
are you ready for the rapid fire?
Let's bring it on.
All right. So what's the one thing that you should never say to your boss?
You're
Rapid
wrong.
fire. Rapid fire. Come on, come on.
You're wrong.
Okay. Flattery versus honesty. What works better with bosses?
Honesty.
Honesty. Okay. One surefire way to grab your boss's attention in a meeting.
Acknowledge them.
And
Acknowledge
give
them,
credit.
appreciate them. Yeah, give
Appreciate them,
credit.
give credit genuinely, as you mentioned. Okay.
Yes.
How do you handle a boss who loves last minute request? You pack your bags, you're going home Friday evening, 8 p.m., and you'll say, hey, Mira, can you just do this little one email? Can you please send it out right away?
Sure, boss. Just for you. And I'm hoping that next weekend you won't.
Brilliant. With the smile. Okay. What's the
Yeah.
most creative excuse you've heard for missing a deadline? You also work with teams. You have your own team now in your outfit. What's the most creative excuse you've heard for missing a deadline?
I lost my phone and I found it 2 hours later.
Brilliant.
That's what I've heard.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay. Coffee chats or email updates or WhatsApp messages? Which one works best in building relationships with bosses?
Coffee chats, big time. Yeah.
Okay. If your boss had a mood meter, what percentage would it show on a Monday morning? And this could be with any of your previous bosses, your first boss. We don't need the name of the boss, but any boss. Mood meter, What would be the
I think
percentage on a
a
Monday morning?
good 75, 80% doing really well. Yeah.
Okay,
I
now
touch
is
wood, I've
the
had good bosses. Yes.
lucky. Now is the slightly difficult one. How do you impress a boss who is impossible to impress? You've tried every trick in the book. Give
I
us
would say
the joker.
I would say, could you invite yourself to be a little kind to yourself and give up trying to impress? I would just say, can you be a little kind? Just be too kind to yourself. It's all right.
Bringing kindness. Beautiful. What's the most underrated skill for managing stakeholders?
Bringing a balance of both warmth and competence to your job. It's very underrated to
Beautiful.
bring warmth. People bring only
Beautiful.
competence. Yes.
Beautiful. Competence and warmth. And the last one, you're doing very, very well, Mira, and we're almost at 9:45. If you had to give a TED talk on boss management, what would the title of your TED talk be?
Sahil, I'm going to take this one from you. It's called How to Have Your Boss Fall in Love with You. I'm sold.
Okay.
Totally.
We've come a complete circle, and that has been so wonderful, so fantastic. Mira, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for taking time out, for being there, and for your insightful words, your profound thoughts, your sweetness, your patience. I'm running out of words, and therefore I'm just borrowing from the comment that's on the screen. Thank you so much, Mira. God bless and take care.
Genuinely, genuinely grateful. Thank you so much, Sahil. Team, it has been an absolute pleasure. The audience has been very encouraging. And I am holding this space only because there were people at the other end listening with so much intent and asking questions with as much curiosity. Thank you for being who you are. Really.
So, thank you so much, Mira. Take care.
Grateful. Bye bye.